This series begins by showing Song Ki-baek, a 33-year-old man who works as a news anchor at a JBC television station. Known as a competent anchor from a well-off family, Ki-baek's colleagues predict that he will soon become the main news anchor at the company. One day, Ki-baek is preparing to broadcast the afternoon news with his colleague Lee Hae-yeon, but she receives a message from her husband who has discovered her affair. This makes Hae-yeon lose focus while delivering the news, switching to Woo-ju, a writer for the JBC variety show Men on the Run, who is on a blind date with a man. At a food stall, Woo-ju admits to her blind date that she doesn't have much time to date because of her job. This is proven when Woo-ju receives an urgent call and promptly leaves to deal with her work emergency, as Woo-ju doesn't want her mediocre career to be further ruined if she doesn't return to the office immediately. Back at the office, Woo-ju has to face Song-hoon, who refuses to participate in the filming of Men on the Run because his girlfriend forbids him from working with female guests. Woo-ju then asks Song-hoon to let her speak with his girlfriend, but Song-hoon refuses to tell her who he is dating. Back at the studio, Hae-yeon receives a threatening message from her husband, who has discovered her affair with Kim Song-hoon, a talent on the variety show Men on the Run produced by Woo-ju. Angrily, Hae-yeon's husband comes to the studio during the news broadcast and publicly confronts his wife. Ki-baek finds himself in the middle of the couple's fight until the husband grabs him and tosses him around. As a result of the incident, Ki-baek became a trending meme on social media, damaging his reputation. Ki-baek then apologized to his manager, Kim Sung-jin, for the embarrassing incident, prompting him to instruct Ki-baek to write an apology letter. Sung-jin also mentioned that Ki-baek's chances of becoming the main news anchor at the company have diminished following the viral social media article about him. Meanwhile, Song-hoon tries to avoid Woo-ju after the article about his closeness with Hae-yeon becomes a hot topic among netizens. On the other hand, Woo-ju must think hard to find a replacement for Jung-han, who suddenly decides to leave the show Men on the Run, despite many viewers liking the presence of the tarot singer. Although her boss intends to cancel the show, Woo-ju insists on keeping her variety show and plans to prove to her boss that her show can still achieve good ratings without Jung-han. Feeling his position as a news anchor is threatened, Ki-baek becomes frustrated with the situation to the point of having stomach pain. Ki-baek then rushes to the elevator to get to the restroom quickly, not realizing that Woo-ju is also using the same elevator. After both enter the elevator, it suddenly stops because a technician, thinking the elevator is empty, begins maintenance. Ki-baek and Woo-ju end up trapped in the elevator. Unable to hold his stomach pain, Ki-baek passes gas, causing Woo-ju to shout for help due to the smell. Luckily, the technician hears Woo-ju's cries and forcibly opens the elevator to release them. After the incident, Ki-baek feels extremely embarrassed and hopes not to meet Woo-ju again. Unfortunately, Woo-ju intends to invite him to join Men on the Run after hearing him recite poetry on the radio. Despite her colleagues doubting that Ki-baek can boost their show's ratings, Woo-ju is even more determined to persuade Ki-baek to join her show. On another occasion, Woo-ju meets Ki-baek to invite him to join the show Men on the Run. Unfortunately, Ki-baek declines, claiming he has an injured leg, but Woo-ju knows he is lying because she found out that Ki-baek scored the highest points at a company basketball game recently. Despite this, Ki-baek still refuses Woo-ju's offer, insisting he wants to continue his chaotic career as a news anchor. Ki-baek then returns to his desk to write the apology letter and do various tasks assigned by his colleagues, even though they are not his duties as a news anchor. At the end of the day, Ki-baek suddenly received a message from Sung-jin, approving his participation in the Woo-ju's variety show without his consent. The following morning, Ki-baek is forced to come to the filming location of Men on the Run, a variety show featuring artists and guests from various professions competing in indoor dodgeball. At that time, Pin, a famous idol, is also participating in the variety show and is seen greeting his fans warmly. Unexpectedly, Pin's friendliness is just a public image, as he always acts harshly towards his staff when they make mistakes. A while later, the filming begins with the division of indoor dodgeball teams where Ki-baek will be on the opposing team of Pin. During the game, they both play seriously, and since Ki-baek frequently becomes Pin's target, he finally retaliates by throwing the ball right at his face. Woo-ju, who was overseeing the match, began to worry because Quebec kept targeting PN. During a break, Wuju asked Quebec to talk privately around the electrical panel without knowing that it was broken because the warning sign had fallen on the floor. At that moment, Wuju warned Quebec not to keep attacking PN personally. If PN has an unpleasant experience, the variety show could be threatened with cancellation. In the middle of their argument, Quebec suddenly smelled something that made him sneeze and lose his balance, accidentally touching the wires inside the electrical panel and getting shocked. This incident caused Quebec to lose consciousness, and the electricity in the sports hall went out. After Quebec was revived by Wuju, he seemed uninjured, but Quebec started to show strange behavior as he began speaking his mind freely. Quebec even dared to confront PN with very harsh words. After filming, Quebec felt frustrated with what was happening because he had always been careful with his words. The next day, the moment when Quebec spoke harshly to PN went viral on social media because one of his fans at the filming location secretly recorded the incident. This sparked Sungjin's anger, leading one of Quebec's colleagues to send him a message advising him to hide from Sungjin for a while. Shortly after receiving the message from his friend, Quebec met some reporters who were taking a break, but his condition returned, causing him to speak too honestly to his colleague, making some people uncomfortable. To avoid further trouble, Quebec decided to leave immediately and accidentally ran into Wuju. At that moment, Wuju quickly told Quebec to apologize to PN, who was a main attraction of her variety show. Unfortunately, Quebec stubbornly refused while revealing all the bad things about PN that he always belittled others. Before Quebec said something undesirable, he chose to leave Wuju. On the next occasion, Wuju, not wanting to lose her talent, tried to meet PN to apologize and sent the idol a basket of fruit. Even though Wuju waited for hours in front of his house, PN still refused to meet her. This made Wuju regret being harsh towards Quebec and start to believe that his words about PN being rude might be true. Meanwhile, Quebec, trying to escape from the office, accidentally ran into Sungjin, forcing him to listen to his rant about how Quebec once again made bad news. Quebec tried to hold himself back from saying anything to avoid worsening the situation. He even distracted himself by looking at the floral fabric on his manager's chair. That night, while returning home from the office, Quebec faced trouble after encountering some of PN's fans who were unhappy with what he had done to their idol. Without thinking twice, Quebec fled to his parents' house to stay temporarily so that PN's fans wouldn't find out where he lived. Upon arriving at his parents' modest home, Quebec deliberately wore a mask and taped his mouth shut to avoid saying anything inappropriate to his family, who had always relied on him. Unfortunately, Quebec's unemployed parents and younger brother kept asking about the viral news involving him. At that moment, his younger brother, Song Uwenbeck, even intentionally removed the tape from his mouth, causing Quebec to angrily express his frustration uncontrollably towards Uwenbeck. They ended up fighting until Quebec decided to leave his parents' house. The next day, Quebec met Sungjin to apologize, but only harsh words came out of his mouth, hurting Sungjin's feelings. At the same time, Wuju and her colleague entered, surprised to hear all of his honest comments about Sungjin. Panicking, Wuju tried to calm Quebec until he was finally able to apologize to his manager. After leaving Sungjin's office, Wuju realized that Quebec's strange behavior of speaking without thinking began after the incident in the electrical panel room the other day. Therefore, Wuju quickly chased after Quebec and took him to see a doctor named Kim Ju-ho. After hearing the explanation about Quebec's condition, Ju-ho asked Quebec to undergo some laboratory tests first. On another occasion, because their variety show failed, Wuju and her colleagues had to move to a smaller workspace and create a new, more interesting program. Wuju and her teammates, Sung Yi-na and Lee Min-gu, then quickly discussed ideas for a show that could attract many viewers. At that moment, Yi-na suggested that Jung-han host the new show because he was popular. Although it was a good idea, Wuju rejected it because secretly, Jung-han was her ex-boyfriend. The next day, Quebec tried to convince himself that he could work well and control everything he said because it was an important day where he would host a prestigious award show in Korea. When the award show began, Quebec performed well until he sneezed due to the makeup artist fixing his makeup, and his condition suddenly relapsed, causing him to speak his mind again. Throughout the event, Quebec seemed unable to control what he said, including interrupting an actor who won an award that night. Without thinking of the consequences, Quebec mentioned that the actor was a drug user, which made the actor angry and hit him until he lost consciousness.
어둠의 세계를 주름잡는 마약왕, 마약 투약 혐의로 받은 처벌 때문이었죠. 죄송합니다!
In his unconscious state, Quebec dreamed that he was being scolded by Sung Jin for ruining the prestigious award show. Quebec was also instructed by his mother to keep lying that he came from a wealthy family so that all his family members could continue to be parasites in his life. When Quebec woke up, he found himself at his house and immediately checked his phone, seeing dozens of messages informing him that he was penalized for the incident at the award show. Quebec's problems increased when the real owner of the house called and asked him to move out immediately. He also received a call from the doctor informing him that he was suffering from disinhibition, which made him unable to control his emotions and behavior. To calm himself from all his problems, Quebec decided to go to the beach with his friend, Yoon Ji-hoo. When Ji-hoo began to notice his strange behavior of speaking without thinking, Quebec decided to go buy drinks before he said anything bad about his friend. Carrying the drinks he had just bought, Quebec climbed the cliff by the beach and shouted out all his frustrations about his efforts to become the best news anchor, which had become futile after all the problems he had encountered. At the same time, Woo-ju was walking around the beach and saw Quebec shouting from the cliff. Thinking that Quebec might do something bad, Woo-ju tried to stop him by climbing the cliff, but this only caused them both to fall into the sea. After a while, Woo-ju managed to save Quebec and bring him to the shore. Quebec was annoyed with Woo-ju for seemingly following him, while she admitted that she felt guilty for what had happened to Quebec because he had to suffer from a strange illness after being electrocuted on the set of Men on the Run. As an act of atonement, Woo-ju decided to give Quebec a ride since his phone was damaged from falling into the sea and he was left behind by Ji-hoo. On the way back, Quebec asked Woo-ju to pull over after he noticed that she looked unwell. Shortly after, Quebec panicked as Woo-ju lost consciousness due to hypothermia. Without thinking twice, Quebec immediately took Woo-ju to the hospital so she could receive medical treatment. Just after Woo-ju regained consciousness, she saw Quebec wearing a mask and a hospital blanket, helping a boy who was carrying his fainted brother and was confused because no medical staff were assisting. Quebec then instructed the boy to lie and say that his younger brother was no longer breathing. Thanks to Quebec's idea, the healthcare workers rushed to help the fainted kid. Woo-ju was impressed by Quebec's kindness, especially since he also showed concern for her. Sometime later, Woo-ju's condition improved, and they finally parted ways to return to their respective homes. The next day at the office, Woo-ju was surprised to see Lee Ha-young joining the writing team for the variety show she was working on. Woo-ju then recalled her past relationship with Ha-young when they were both new crew members at JBC. In the past, Ha-young often caused problems and inconvenienced Woo-ju, making her quite worried about her presence on her team. Meanwhile, Quebec looked frustrated because he couldn't go to the office due to Sung Jin's punishment. To pass the time, Quebec kept busy by working out and watching the news on TV, imagining himself as the news anchor. Additionally, Quebec began practicing controlling his overly honest speech, although it was still difficult. Quebec then recalled how he could control his words when Woo-ju was around him. Because of this, Quebec immediately called Woo-ju to discuss this, but Woo-ju ignored the call because she was about to meet Kwukbom to persuade him to join her new show. Unfortunately, Kwukbom didn't seem very interested in Woo-ju's show until Jung-han appeared and expressed his interest in joining her show. Since Jung-han was a rising celebrity, Kwukbom changed his mind and decided to attend the variety show casting. After the meeting, Woo-ju talked to Jung-han and expressed her frustration with him suddenly wanting to join her variety show. Despite this, Jung-han insisted on participating in the show she had written. On the other hand, Quebec consulted with Ju-ho about the disinhibition disorder he was suffering from. Ju-ho explained that the condition could switch on and off like a light switch. However, Ju-ho still needed to confirm this through a series of tests that Quebec would need to undergo to determine what triggered his condition. On another day, Quebec, having completed his punishment, finally returned to the office. Unfortunately, he was met with ridicule from his manager and colleagues. His division even planned to look for a new news anchor, likely to replace him. This made Quebec feel uncomfortable, so he chose to eat alone during the lunch break. Woo-ju, seeing this, approached Quebec to eat together. After finishing their meals, they chatted about their difficulties working at JBC. At that time, Woo-ju encouraged Quebec not to give up on his life just because of the problems he faced at the office. On another occasion, when Quebec was about to go home, Sungjin suddenly asked him to participate in a news anchor audition at JBC, which Quebec agreed to because it was an opportunity to improve his career. The next day, Quebec went to the audition location as suggested by Sungjin, but his condition relapsed in the middle of the audition, causing him to start speaking his mind. Fortunately, Wooju arrived and calmed Quebec until he managed to control his speech. With Wooju's help, Quebec was able to deliver the news well, even receiving high scores from the judges.
여러분 안녕하십니까? JBC 뉴스 시작합니다. 코로나 시국을 거쳐 감염병 보도와 인권에 대한 기준이 송기백이었습니다.
However, the judges intended to recruit a celebrity with a large fan base to boost ratings. This conversation was overheard by Quebec through his earphones, making him upset because it was unfair to him despite his abilities. Out of disappointment, Quebec decided to resign from JBC, considering it a corrupt company. After deciding to leave his job, Quebec began to feel a dilemma because now he couldn't pay his installments or support his largely unemployed family. At the office, Wooju also faced a bitter reality after discovering that the entertainment department director was giving Ha-young a higher salary than her, despite Wooju being a senior writer at JBC. Additionally, her colleague mentioned that her performance was less efficient compared to Ha-young, who could secure many sponsors in a short time. Although saddened, Wooju tried to remain cheerful in front of her friends. That night, Wooju was surprised to find Quebec on the rooftop of the apartment building rented by her mother. When Wooju asked about the luxurious apartment where Quebec lived, he admitted that the apartment was not his but belonged to his friend, Sungjin, who was abroad. Hearing that Sungjin was returning, Quebec had to move in with his parents, who rented from Wooju's mother. Wooju then commented that Quebec's decision to leave his job was cool, and that not many people had the courage to make such a tough decision. Since all the rooms were occupied, Quebec had to sleep in the cramped storage room of the rented house. On the other hand, Quebec's presence at home was not welcomed by Eun-baek and his other younger brother, Song Pung-baek. Despite this, Quebec tried to adjust and looked for a new job so he could move out soon. One day, Ji-hoo, knowing that Quebec was looking for a job, introduced him to Kim Hyuk-jin, a retired senior news anchor who had become a less successful freelance host. This bothered Quebec because he didn't want to end up like Hyuk-jin, so he refused his offer to become a freelance host like him. On the other hand, Wooju tried to improve her reputation in front of her boss and team by asking Jung-han to join her new variety show, Couples Paradise. Even though Wooju approached professionally, Jung-han still brought up their past relationship, making her feel uncomfortable. On another occasion, Wooju informed her team about Jung-han joining the variety show Couples Paradise. This news excited her team even more, especially when Jung-han invited the whole team to dine together before the filming process began. Because of this, Ha-young secretly felt jealous of Wooju's success, suspecting that she had a special relationship with Jung-han, which helped her convince the famous singer to join their variety show. That night, Wooju met Quebec, and they ended up sitting together and chatting. Quebec also lent his personal notebook to Wooju to read when she felt sad. On another occasion, Quebec's financial situation worsened since he was unemployed. His mother, Na Yu-jung, had to work hard because his father, Song In-soo, was not working due to health reasons. Amid the deteriorating family finances, Yu-jung was upset after seeing the air conditioner running continuously, causing the electricity bill to skyrocket. Unexpectedly, it was Quebec who was responsible, but he did not admit it when Yu-jung asked him about who turned on the air conditioner. After talking with his mother, Quebec realized that his condition was not acting up because he could lie to his mother. After thinking for a while, Quebec realized that his meeting with Wooju the previous night had somehow deactivated his condition. Not long after, Quebec received a call offering him a job as a speech tutor for a young boy. Initially hesitant, Quebec quickly accepted the job upon learning that he would be paid 4 times the usual rate. On the first day of teaching, Quebec was surprised to find himself tutoring a problematic boy who constantly played pranks on him, making him sneeze. This caused his condition to flare up again. On his way home after teaching, Quebec began to realize that every time he sneezed, his strange condition would relapse. Conversely, Wooju's touch always managed to help Quebec control his speech again. Realizing this, Quebec hurriedly set out to find Wooju to discuss the matter. Meanwhile, Woo Ju, still at the office, was working hard to create the best scenario for her variety show when she opened Quebec's notebook and got the idea to invite him to join Couples Paradise, which was set to be filmed in a few days. Without thinking twice, Woo Ju went out to find Quebec. After a long search, they finally met on the rooftop of Woo Ju's house, where Quebec suddenly grabbed her hand and placed it on his chest so that his speech condition could be controlled. During this moment, Quebec confessed that he came from a modest family and was taught by his mother to lie about being a rich family's son to protect themselves from debt collectors. This pretense continued into Quebec's adulthood, leading his co-workers to believe he was from a wealthy family to ensure his career's smooth progression. Quebec stayed in a luxurious apartment owned by Sung Jin and wore expensive clothes provided by his friend. Hearing Quebec's story, Woo Ju didn't seem to mind and offered him a spot on her variety show. Without hesitation, Quebec agreed. A few days later, filming for Couples Paradise finally began, where the guests would interact to find a partner they liked. Various games had been prepared by the creative team for the guests, who came from diverse professional backgrounds, to play. The man and woman who became the winning couple at the end of the variety show would receive a prize of 1.2 million won. One by one, the guests arrived, and when Jung-han entered, all the female participants warmly welcomed him. Unlike the reception Quebec received, all the participants then stepped forward to introduce themselves. They all tried to highlight their best qualities to appear attractive to the others, but Quebec, whose condition was acting up, honestly said that he was a former news anchor who was currently unemployed. Everyone was shocked by Quebec's statement. Similarly, during an interview session with Ha Young, Quebec gave strange answers according to his true feelings. Woo Ju then approached Quebec to remind him to create a better image by winning the competition. Shortly afterward, the first game began, featuring male participants battling in a water pit on the beach. Whoever remained in the pit until the end would be the winner. During this, Quebec managed to knock one male participant out of the pit, and then the female participants chose their partners. Once the female participants joined the pit, each couple had to protect a balloon tied to the back of the woman. If a balloon burst, the couple would be automatically eliminated. The battle was intense until Quebec's team burst a couple's balloon and then had to face Jung-han's team. As the fight was about to start, Quebec suddenly remembered the fight between him and Jung-han back in high school. As a result, Quebec couldn't concentrate and ended up losing. During the break, Quebec looked for his female partner, Choi Yu-young, and found her talking to her boyfriend on the phone. Despite the rule that all participants in the variety show were forbidden from having relationships with others. Knowing this, Quebec chose not to expose Yu-young's violation. He then gave a band-aid to Yu-young, who had injured her foot in the previous game. Impressed by Quebec's kindness, Yu-young suggested they stick together until the final round. On another occasion, Quebec brought a lot of juice to share with the crew and participants to win the hearts of the female participants and improve his image in front of everyone. Unexpectedly, Jung-han had set up a tent providing various luxurious foods, making Quebec feel inferior, although many people ended up liking the juice made by his mother. Just as Woo Ju was about to ask for the last bottle of juice, Quebec gave it to Yu-young, disappointing her. That night, filming resumed with casual conversations among the participants after dinner. At that time, Song Joon, another participant in Couples Paradise, sprayed mosquito repellent, causing Quebec to sneeze, which triggered his condition. At the same time, all participants received a message from the creative team instructing them to send a message to the person they liked. While all the participants were busy sending messages, Quebec chose to sing because he didn't know whom he liked. Nonetheless, one crew member named Chaeyeon assumed that Quebec liked Yu-young, who had been his partner in the previous filming session. Back to Quebec, after thinking for a while, he intended to send a message to Yu-young to keep their promise to choose each other. Unfortunately, Quebec noticed a piece of seaweed stuck in her teeth, almost causing him to say something rude. Realizing this, Quebec ultimately sent a message telling Yu-young to look in the mirror. All the crew members who knew about this were puzzled by his message. The next morning, Quebec had an interview with Ha Young about the meaning of his message to Yu-young. Ha Young also informed Quebec that he didn't receive any messages from the female participants, indicating that no one had chosen him. Therefore, Ha Young asked Quebec to provoke Jung-han, especially since his role in the show was to be the antagonist opposing Jung-han. Hearing this, Quebec felt disappointed and believed that Woo Ju had been playing with him, thinking she had invited him to participate in the show only to be made the antagonist. Wu Ju tried to explain everything, but Quebec refused to listen. On another day, the filming continued in the forest where the paired participants would go hiking to find clues prepared by the crew. During the hike, Quebec, paired again with Yu Young, chose a different path from the other participants until they were scared by the crew positioned along the trail. Startled by the suddenly moving bushes, Quebec slipped into a ravine and lost consciousness. Panicking, Yu Young immediately reported it to the crew. As night fell, Wu Ju, hearing the news, ran into the forest to search for Quebec. Meanwhile, other crew members tried to contact the police to help with the search. With her flashlight, Wu Ju continued to search for Quebec despite spraining her ankle. Fortunately, Wu Ju eventually found Quebec unharmed. In fact, Quebec tended to her injury. At that moment, Quebec was still upset with Wu Ju, thinking she had used him as the antagonist in the variety show. Wu Ju explained that she had not done such a thing and admitted that her heart raced when she was near him. After expressing her feelings, Wu Ju asked Quebec to forget about it and return to their base camp. Upon arriving at the base camp, Yu Young immediately hugged Quebec, who had returned without serious injuries. Seeing their closeness, Wu Ju secretly felt jealous. A while later, Wu Ju's confession of love kept Quebec awake, unable to sleep. Wu Ju also kept thinking about Quebec, but her thoughts were interrupted when Jung Han approached her to offer a drink. They chatted and walked together around the filming location. When they encountered Quebec, who was also out for a walk, Wu Ju, embarrassed by her confession, hid in a large bucket, although Quebec eventually discovered her. While Jung Han was puzzled by Wu Ju's strange behavior. The next day, the participants of the variety show were challenged to cook meals using ingredients provided by the crew. Some struggled with cooking, including Quebec, who ended up making a strange dish with pig's feet. Despite the ordinary food, Yu Young still accepted Quebec's breakfast invitation, finding his approach more sincere than the other men. They had breakfast together while solving puzzles created by the crew. After receiving a clue from Yu Young, Quebec finally understood its meaning. A while later, Quebec was surprised by the appearance of a female participant named Min Cho Hui, who was the first love of all the male participants, including Quebec and Jung Han. They both had competed for Cho Hui when they were in school. Additionally, it was known that Cho Hui had lived abroad with one of the male participants. In this session, the male participants who correctly answered the clue would get a date with Cho Hui. Unexpectedly, Jung Han easily won the game, earning the chance to walk with Cho Hui. During the break, Quebec chatted with Cho Hui, who seemed more comfortable with him than with the other male participants. Wu Ju, who happened to witness this, felt jealous of their closeness. When the dating session was about to start, the variety show crew allowed Cho Hui to invite one participant to join her on the date with Jung Han. Unexpectedly, Cho Hui chose Quebec to accompany her and Jung Han on the date. Later, Cho Hui secretly confessed to Quebec that she had joined the show to reunite with him, whom she had missed. A while later, the date was finally held at an amusement park, but Quebec's condition started to act up after a bubble from a little boy touched his nose. Quebec tried hard to control his words, especially since he had to go on extreme rides that scared him. After getting off the ride, Quebec began to feel nauseous, while Jung Han was approached by his fans who wanted to take pictures with him. Seeing Jung Han becoming uncomfortable with his fans, Quebec asked the fans to apologize to Jung Han. Uwon-baek, who was part of the crew, quickly took Quebec away before his older brother could cause more trouble, as some park visitors had started recording his actions. On another occasion, Quebec, still unable to control his words, met with Wu Ju to express his frustration with her for making him the antagonist in the show. Despite this, Quebec said he wouldn't let Wu Ju down and would show his best side on the show. This was evident as more crew members started to appreciate Quebec's caring actions. Many of Jung Han's fans also thought Quebec's reprimanding of rude fans was cool, and they eventually became fans of him, including Yu Young. That night, the participants and crew surprised Cho Hui with a birthday celebration. The celebration made Wu Ju feel quite sad because it was also her birthday, and the only person who remembered was her mother, On Bakya, who called her. Unexpectedly, a few moments later, a crew member suddenly brought a birthday cake for Wu Ju, admitting they had forgotten her birthday and were only now surprising her. As the night wore on, Quebec was still awake and was approached by Cho Hui, who asked him which woman he liked on the show. Honestly, Quebec said that the woman wasn't her. This answer disappointed Cho Hui, leading her to suspect that Yu Young was the woman Quebec liked. After talking with Cho Hui, Quebec approached Wu Ju, who was sitting alone by the beach to calm herself. Knowing that Wooju was stressed, Quebec offered her some spicy food, as she usually consumed it when stressed. Wooju felt happy with the attention Quebec showed her. Upon returning to the lodge, Quebec heard that Yu Young had suddenly left the filming location without any clear reason. To keep the program running smoothly, the next day, Wooju agreed to replace Yu Young as a participant in Couples Paradise. The idea actually came from Jung Han, who still wanted to get back together with her. The crew, who learned about Jung Han's reasoning, were quite surprised by the past relationship between Jung Han and Wooju. Although initially met with resistance from some crew members and participants, Wooju's decision to join the show was eventually agreed upon. When filming resumed, Wooju, who was not yet used to being in front of the camera, appeared awkward and often caused minor disruptions during the shoot. Fortunately, the disruptions were not severe, so filming could continue. In the next session, the male participants were instructed to choose an item representing one of the female participants. Being last in line, Quebec picked a cat-shaped keychain, which turned out to belong to Wooju, pairing them up to play a game using it. With their enthusiasm and teamwork, Quebec and Wooju won the game and earned a date ticket. They both vied for the ticket until Quebec ultimately won it, intending to use it for a date with Cho Hui. With the ticket in hand, Quebec invited Cho Hui to go biking along the beach, enjoying its beauty. When they took a break, they started talking about various things, including the issue of Yu Young leaving the filming location. It turned out that Yu Young left after being pressured by her. Cho Hui then admitted that she knew Yu Young had a boyfriend and threatened to report her to the crew if she didn't leave the show. Apparently, Cho Hui did this out of jealousy, believing that Yu Young was the woman Quebec liked. However, Quebec denied this, making Cho Hui realize that he liked Wooju. Quebec then warned Cho Hui not to do anything bad to Wooju. On the other hand, Uwon-baek secretly liked Chaeyeon, but he was heartbroken after finding out that she had a son who seemed to be close to Quebec because the boy often played in the park where he went to calm himself after leaving his job. That night, all the participants of Couples Paradise played a game of truth or dare using Jenga blocks. Whoever refused to answer a question from another participant had to drink. During the session, Wooju arrived late and caught everyone's attention with her beautiful soft pink outfit. Soon, they all started playing the game, and when it was Cho Hui's turn, she asked Jung Han about the reason for his breakup with Wooju. Jung Han, unwilling to answer the question, chose to drink a glass of soju in front of him. In the past, Jung Han and Wooju had to end their relationship because Jung Han lied to his mother about her status, which he had been hiding all along. Back in the present, after the game ended, the crew asked all the participants to send a message to the person they wanted to go on a date with. Unexpectedly, Wooju chose Jung Han as her date, and that morning, they went to a market together to clean up trash from the streets. After completing the task, they sat by the beach where Jung Han expressed his hope that Wooju could be happy even if she wasn't with him. Meanwhile, Quebec was on a date with Cho Hui, who tried to win his heart by cooking for him. Unfortunately, Cho Hui's efforts were in vain, making her frustrated and threatening to trouble Wooju. This threat did not scare Quebec at all. On the contrary, it made him more determined to express his feelings to Wooju. Without hesitation, Quebec ran to the beach to find Wooju and told her that he liked her and promised to always protect her. Hearing this, Wooju was speechless but felt happy as her feelings were finally reciprocated. On another occasion, the final session of Couples Paradise took place, where all the male and female participants faced each other on the beach to choose their partners. A few months later, Quebec's family and Bokja gathered on the rooftop to watch the variety show that he and Wooju had participated in. When Wooju met Quebec, they both felt awkward and tried to avoid any interaction. After the show ended, Wooju, who had just returned from the convenience store, accidentally saw Quebec drunk and playing at the nearby playground. At that moment, Wooju confessed that she missed Quebec, especially since they hadn't spoken at all after the filming ended. Quebec then asked why Wooju hadn't chosen anyone during the final session of Couples Paradise. Wooju then explained that she had followed Quebec's instruction to close her eyes and imagine beautiful moments with him. Realizing that Wooju shared his feelings, Quebec kissed Wooju, although they both felt awkward afterward and returned to their respective homes. The next morning, Quebec invited Wooju for breakfast together, but since she didn't show up, Quebec took the breakfast to Bokja's house and found Wooju just waking up. Embarrassed, Wooju quickly went back to her room to freshen up before meeting Quebec on the rooftop. At that moment, they discussed the events of the previous night. although neither was ready to officially declare their relationship. At the same time, Quebec's father arrived to hang clothes, interrupting their conversation, and Wooju soon left. In the afternoon, Wooju deliberately visited her colleagues from the couple's Paradise team, even though she was no longer a writer for the team. After bringing them coffee, Wooju left because her former entertainment department director seemed displeased with her presence. At the JBC broadcasting office, Ji-hoo and Quebec's former colleagues discussed Quebec's success on Couples Paradise. Meanwhile, Wooju, who had become a writer for the local live info show, faced a problem because the show's presenter couldn't make it to the filming location. Fortunately, Quebec agreed to help and arrived in his suit at a food stall where he was to review the food served. When filming began, Meek Young, the restaurant owner, acted curtly towards Quebec. Apparently, her 2 children had asked their mother to be harsh with customers to gain public attention for their restaurant. Quebec honestly commented on the taste of the rib dish, saying it wasn't as good as it used to be since he used to frequent the place during college. Meek Young was annoyed by Quebec's review, especially since he mentioned that the previous owner was always friendly to customers and gave extra portions to students. Because of Quebec's honest review, Meek Young's children were angry and wanted to stop the filming because they didn't want their restaurant's image to suffer. Despite this, Wooju encouraged Quebec to remain an honest host. Shortly after, Wooju persuaded Meek Young to continue the filming process. Additionally, Meek Young agreed on the condition that they reshoot everything, as she intended to cook the rib stew using the old recipe and asked her 2 children to keep quiet. Thanks to Wooju's negotiation skills, the filming proceeded smoothly, and the show's producer even asked Quebec to become a permanent host of local live info show. Unfortunately, Quebec declined, stating that Wooju was only a temporary writer for the show. Another day, Quebec and Wooju promoted Couples Paradise, but they couldn't show affection in front of the crew despite their growing closeness. This was because Quebec had chosen Cho Hui during the final session, so he had to maintain a discreet relationship with Wooju. When Wooju and Cho Hui met in the makeup room, Cho Hui deliberately tried to make Wooju jealous by showing off her closeness with Quebec. Despite this, Wooju remained calm and did not get provoked by her behavior. Shortly after, the promotion event started, but Quebec couldn't hide his jealousy when Jung Han helped Wooju with her shoes. This prompted one of the crew members to remind Quebec to stay focused. After finishing their work, Quebec and Wooju decided to take a walk together and take pictures. They held hands throughout their walk home until they were startled by the appearance of Insu, causing them to quickly let go of each other's hands. Once home, Insu, knowing that Quebec was interested in Wooju, urged him to clarify his relationship with Wooju so they wouldn't have to hide their relationship anymore. On the other hand, Bokja is dating Kim Young-won, a handsome and wealthy widower. In this event, Bokja is scheduled to meet Young-won's mother, Jung-hee, as the relationship between them is getting serious. Unfortunately, Jung-hee does not like Bokja and asks her to stay away from Young-won. Jung-hee even splashed water on Bokja, while she tried to control her anger and remain calm in front of Young-won's mother. On another occasion, Jung Han comes to Bokja's salon to tell her about his past relationship with Wooju and to apologize for hiding everything. Shortly afterward, Wooju arrives and hears all of Jung Han's statements. When they talk alone, Jung Han admits that he still loves Wooju, but she rejects him because she now likes Quebec. Meanwhile, Mamira, a director and owner of a management agency, invites Quebec to her salon where he receives an offer to join her agency to get more work in the entertainment industry. Unfortunately, Quebec hasn't thought about his career because he is preoccupied with thoughts of Wooju. Ji-hoo, aware of this, advises Quebec to clarify his relationship with Wooju so that he can start rebuilding his career. Taking Ji-hoo's advice, Quebec immediately contacts Wooju. Unfortunately, Wooju does not respond, and while walking home, Quebec accidentally sees Wooju hugging Jung Han. His plan to express his feelings to Wooju fails as she has to take Jung Han to the hospital after he faints upon hearing her confession about her feelings for Quebec. A while later, Jung Han finally regains consciousness, and Quebec drives him back to his luxurious apartment. At that time, Jung Han tells Quebec about Wooju's feelings for him and asks Quebec to go see her immediately. Although Jung Han does not approve of the relationship between Quebec and Wooju, he will support it for her happiness. Without hesitation, Quebec immediately went to see Wooju and asked her to be his girlfriend. Wooju agreed, and that night, they officially became a couple. Wooju's days seemed to become more colorful with the attention Quebec gave her. They also took time to watch Couples Paradise, which had gained high ratings since its debut. Quebec and Jung-han even became more popular and were contracted to star in a commercial. Meanwhile, Wooju heard that she would not be included as a writer in the next episode of Couples Paradise. This made Wooju sad, but she pretended to be cheerful and tried to work as usual. Shortly after, Wooju decided to step down from writing for Couples Paradise and planned to move to another division. At home, Wooju deliberately did not tell Quebec about her resignation from Couples Paradise. Instead, she chose to listen to Quebec talk about his new advertising offer after joining Mira's agency. On another day, some crew members were discussing Jung-han and lamenting his decision to participate in Couples Paradise, which they felt lowered his dignity. Jung-han's staff member, Kang Hyung-taek, overheard them and immediately scolded the two crew members. Fortunately, Jung-han arrived, and their argument ceased. At the salon, Bak-ja was visited by a woman named Jiyeon, who was Wooju's biological mother. Knowing this, Bak-ja refused to serve her, saying the salon was closed. Wooju was actually at the salon, but pretended not to recognize her mother until Jiyeon decided to leave. After Jiyeon left, Bak-ja started to worry, fearing that Wooju might be taken back by her biological mother. The next day, Wooju met with director Hund, who asked Wooju to come on her YouTube program discussing Couples Paradise. Since she was no longer part of the program, Wooju declined and chose to remain behind the scenes. When Wooju returned home, she accidentally encountered Jiyeon waiting in front of the salon. Wooju, still pretending not to recognize her biological mother, only said that the salon was closed, then quickly went inside to join Bak-ja, who was having dinner alone. At that moment, Bak-ja shared the story of her first meeting with Wooju when she was a child, which prevented her from doing the unthinkable. The next day, Wooju was still at her house until one day Bak-ja decided to move on with her life and consider Wooju as her own daughter. Back in the present, Quebec went to the JBC office to meet Wooju. From his conversation with Ha Young, Quebec finally learned that Wooju was no longer part of the Couples Paradise team because she had resigned to allow the program to be included in the regular broadcasting slot. That night, Quebec invited Wooju for a walk in the park, hoping she would share her problems with him, but she did not reveal anything before they parted ways. On another occasion, Quebec's and Wooju's relationship was almost discovered by Ina, who visited Wooju at home. To avoid suspicion, Quebec agreed to join Ina and Wooju at a social event. During the event, their closeness made Ina speculate that Quebec and Wooju were dating, even though they both denied it. As night fell, Ina provided a camping tent for Wooju and Quebec to stay near the social event location. When they were alone, Wooju finally opened up to Quebec about her problems over the past few days, including issues at work and her encounter with her biological mother. The next morning, Quebec and Wooju woke up in the tent to surprising news about Chohui's YouTube channel, which had posted a controversial video claiming that Couples Paradise was entirely staged. Chohui even discussed Wooju's and Quebec's long-standing relationship and falsely accused Wooju of being behind Yu Young's departure from the show. Chohui did this out of jealousy over Wooju and Quebec's growing closeness. After the scandal spread, Quebec and Wooju's families, including the staff of Couples Paradise, immediately held a meeting to discuss Chohui's video. They concluded that Chohui had a grudge against Wooju and Quebec, using the popularity of Couples Paradise to gain support. After her statement went viral, Chohui irresponsibly left for Paris to avoid the issue. Besides the backlash from fans, Quebec and Wooju faced pressure from their workplaces to clarify the news. Quebec's agency even asked him to lie about his relationship with Wooju. Meanwhile, Quebec's family, especially In-soo, secretly created social media accounts to defend his son, who was receiving a lot of hate. At the same time, Wooju also started receiving threats from unknown individuals, including a female fan of Jung-han who threw a rock into Bak-ja's salon, breaking a window. Just before the fan could harm Wooju, Quebec arrived to save his girlfriend. Quebec and Wooju took the case to the police. The investigation revealed that the fan of Jung-han was heartbroken seeing Wooju reject Jung-han. Despite the fan's extreme actions, Wooju chose a peaceful resolution, considering the young age of the perpetrator. On the other hand, Jung-han felt guilty for having a fan so obsessed that she would attack others. Sometime later, Quebec finally decided to hold a press conference as requested by his agency. During the event, Quebec initially claimed that he had no relationship with Wooju. Unfortunately, due to panic, his condition flared up, making him unable to control what he said in front of the media. Quebec ended up admitting that he was in a relationship with Wu Ju. Amidst the chaos, Wu Ju arrived to present evidence that Cho Hui was the one who had threatened Yu Young to leave couples paradise. Additionally, Wu Ju and Quebec agreed to publicly acknowledge their relationship in front of all the journalists present. After making their relationship public, Quebec went to Bok Ja's salon to thank Wu Ju for always being by his side. At that moment, Quebec also discussed his uncontrollable condition, even when he was with Wu Ju. At home, Quebec had previously promised to take his family on vacation but had to cancel his plans after receiving a sudden job offer. Not wanting to disappoint his family, Quebec still rented a hotel for them and handed over his credit card for their use during the trip. On the day his family left for their vacation, Quebec accompanied Ji-Hoo to the forest to participate in a variety show where they would live without the internet and other modern conveniences. Guided by an expert who had lived in the forest for a long time, all participants had to survive one night there. However, after only half a day in the forest, Quebec's group encountered many difficulties, from struggling to find food to having to eat unusual meals. Despite this, Quebec tried not to complain, knowing it was all to help Ji-Hoo, who had recently lost his job and needed money for his daughter's medical expenses. Meanwhile, Quebec's family was on their way to their vacation spot when their car suddenly had an accident, causing Yu Jung to fall into a coma and injuring the other family members. Hearing about his family's accident, Quebec immediately rushed to the hospital to check on them. Quebec's home life became chaotic after Yu Jung was hospitalized. The house fell into disarray, while In-soo and Quebec were rarely home due to their busy work schedules. Quebec took on multiple jobs to earn extra money for his mother's hospital bills. Despite his difficulties, Quebec tried to hide them from Wu Ju. On the other hand, Wu Ju, who was aware that her boyfriend was stressed, chose not to ask many questions but instead offered to wash his hair at Bok Ja's salon. The next day at the office, Wu Ju submitted a proposal for a new program, but Ha-young was skeptical about its potential popularity. Meanwhile, Quebec was struggling with his new job as a children's show presenter, but he kept Wu Ju updated about his new job. One night, Wu Ju gathered the courage to meet her biological mother in a park. During their conversation, Ji-yeon wanted to apologize to Wu Ju for abandoning her. Ji-yeon also confessed that she wanted to say goodbye because she and her new family were moving abroad, making it impossible for her to see Wu Ju again. Touched by her mother's apology, Wu Ju chose to make peace with her past. Before parting, Wu Ju wished her mother happiness. On another day, Wu Ju was disappointed when her proposal for the new program was rejected by the director, despite her confidence that it would succeed in replacing Couples Paradise. Feeling desperate and ready to give up, Ina and Mingu received support from two friends who were willing to join Wu Ju's. As for Quebec, he sent his newly earned income to his father to cover his mother's medical expenses. In recent days, Quebec had been anxious because his job opportunities were dwindling, preventing him from providing more money for his mother's hospital bills. Quebec chose to hide this from Wu Ju and his family. In his distress, Quebec lied to Wu Ju, claiming he was working when he was actually sitting in a park, deep in thought. Wu Ju, who was also in the park, eventually discovered Quebec's lie and expressed her disappointment with him for deceiving her. Seeing Wu Ju's anger, Quebec confessed that he chose to lie because he didn't want the person he loved to suffer more because of him. Despite this, Wu Ju insisted that Quebec share his problems with her so that she could at least comfort him. On another occasion, Quebec's problems became more complicated after In-soo was scammed by a colleague. Quebec and his two younger brothers went with In-soo to a warehouse to hold Mr. Jung, the scammer, accountable. Upon arriving at the warehouse, Quebec and the others couldn't find the scammer, so they hid to wait for Jang to arrive. As expected, Jang soon arrived with his men to collect their goods. At that moment, In-soo appeared and demanded that Jang to return his items that were to be shipped abroad by him. However, Jang chose to fight back, forcing In-soo to use his martial arts skills to defeat all of Jang's men. At the same time, the police arrived at the warehouse to arrest Jang, who had been targeted for fraud. In-soo and his sons quickly hid to avoid being implicated in the fraud case. After retrieving the items they were looking for, Quebec apologized, realizing that his father was a responsible person. Quebec also regretted having opposed his father in the past due to his selfishness. In the midst of their conversation, Quebec received a message from the hospital about Yu Jung's condition. Without hesitation, Quebec and his family immediately returned to the hospital and found that Yu Jung had regained consciousness after being in a coma for several days. Quebec and the others were happy and grateful to see Yu Jung had passed her critical phase. At work, Wu Ju canceled her plan to involve Yi Na and Min Gu in her latest project after learning that her two friends had received many better job offers from other places. Wu Ju hoped her friends would get better opportunities rather than working on her program, which was not guaranteed to succeed. Meanwhile, Quebec received an offer to return to his position as a news anchor, but he declined it even though it had been his childhood dream. Quebec said he wanted to work honestly without deceiving others. At home, Wu Ju asked Bok Ja to get married and have a life partner, but she refused, saying she only wanted to focus on taking care of Wu Ju. Hearing this, Wu Ju became upset, feeling like a burden to Bok Ja, preventing her from wanting to marry. They argued until Wu Ju decided to leave the house to calm down. Wu Ju informed Quebec about her fight with Bok Ja. To cheer her up, Quebec went to meet Wu Ju at the playground. During their conversation, Quebec suggested that Wu Ju be honest about what she really wanted from Bok Ja. After hearing his advice, Wu Ju rushed home, apologized to Bok Ja, and explained that she wanted Bok Ja to get married because she wanted her to be happy and live with someone she loved. Bok Ja then admitted that she also wanted to get married, but her partner had not yet discussed their marriage. On another day, Jung Han decided to leave Korea for a few months to go on vacation after experiencing difficult times as an idol recently. Meanwhile, Quebec, now hosting a show for marginalized communities, and Wu Ju were preparing to work on a new project together with Yi Na and Min Gu, who chose to stay with her team. 6 months later, Quebec's life seemed to be going well, and he kept his promise to attend his mother's school event as a special guest. At the same time, Wu Ju became more successful as a scriptwriter and was now working on a new project. Additionally, Bok Ja's relationship with her boyfriend became more serious, making Wu Ju even happier as she might soon have a new father, with Bok Ja planning to propose to her boyfriend on Jeju Island. After 6 months of being away, Jung Han finally returned to Korea and was warmly welcomed by all the television crew, including Wu Ju. During his break from filming, Jung Han had gained many life lessons and was now ready to restart his career from scratch. On another occasion, Quebec and Wu Ju attended a farewell event for Gu Won, who often played in the park with Quebec. At the event, Gu Won performed as a storyteller, narrating a tale about a lion who lied. Throughout the performance, Quebec felt that the story was aimed at him, as he often lied to cover up his sadness and problems. Quebec did this to avoid appearing weak and to not burden those around him, but without realizing it, all those lies led him to various problems and misunderstandings with those he loved. Because of this, Quebec now chose to be honest and not hide his problems from his loved ones. In the final scene of the series, after the performance ended and all the audience had left the theater, Quebec went up on stage with Wu Ju to propose to her with a pair of rings. They both intended to live together and strive to complement each other. Moral lesson from the story: never lie about food reviews, or you might end up wrestling with angry customers and extra spicy ribs. When in doubt, be honest. It's better than trying to juggle secret recipes and secret relationships.